Like I said, some of the earlier generations, I believe that they were light enough to pass, but then after they got here, and it's obvious from pictures and the way the family has always thought of themselves, readily acknowledged their backgrounds. But I did find, actually, I didn't, Ernie at the local library found the voting record where James and some of the others here had voted back in I want to say 1807 or 1808. Yeah.
That's highly unusual. Have you found any other cases of people of color voting in?
Yeah, there were, I don't recall offhand, but I copied the pages that he brought to me. I just copied because there were a lot of surnames that I recognized on there. So yeah, it's interesting.
Did any of your relatives serve in any military?
I haven't found, not until maybe the Civil War and World War I, and on the Stevens family, I haven't found any that did prior to that, but I did find in Washington's Darker Brother, they talked about several of the earlier colored families that settled into the area. Um, it had no. It had Basil Norman had married a Fortune Stevens, and it was spelled, Stevens early on was spelled Stephens, and I understand that it was Stevens' son in Maryland, and then they shortened it, and then in later years it became Stevens. But I found that in that book that James, in the pension records, James Stevens was present when Fortune Stevens and Basil Norman married in 1792, and they were in Frederick, Maryland at the time, and I believe, but I haven't confirmed it, I believe Fortune may be my fourth great-grandfather, James Stevens' sister. So when I order the military, the pension records, I'm hoping that when she applied, that they asked who her parents and who her siblings were to get that information.
What other stories have you heard about your family along those lines? Things that might have happened in the early days, or as you come up the line?
In the early days, like with my parents or grandparents.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still with your grandparents.
Well, I did hear that in Jethro's obituary, it said that he was associated with a lumber company, but I haven't been able to figure out, I haven't found any papers that actually say he was part owner in the lumber company.
Is that lumber company in Washington County?
Yes, it was right in this area. Now, Polly seems to remember a mill in this area. I'm trying to find his, because I have that in here too, the obituary. I transcribe all of it and put all of that information in my information. Um, oh, oh, that's her. He was he was supposed to be, now in the obituary it says he was part owner in the A.W. Humphreys and Stevens Lumber Company. But as I've looked through records, I'll have to look like at tax records or property records to find more about it, but it says that he was associated with that lumber company. Now, Polly seems to remember a sawmill down over the hill, and so maybe he provided lumber or wood to the lumber company, and that was how he was associated, but I don't know yet. But I'll keep digging.
And one other question on your grandparents. What kind of work did they do? I want to make sure I understand what kind of work they did. Occupation.
My grandparents, my maternal grandfather worked at they called it the Clevite. Well, he was a coal miner for several years, and then I'm not sure what else he did, but he worked in the Clevite, which is just north of McConnellsville. I think now it's called the Meba plant or something. It's a plant just north of McConnellsville.
His name was?
James Adams Jr. And my grandmother did, she's a housewife, and she might have done cleaning for some people, but she was pretty much just a housewife. My other grandfather was jack of all trades. I mean, he hauled coal, he hauled lumber, he hauled fruits and vegetables. He had a fruit and vegetable stand in Zanesville at different periods. He did move Reverend Morse from, I don't know whether it's Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, but one of the two. Back in the early 30s, Reverend Morse had put an advertisement in, I believe, a newspaper, wanting to move from there to Zanesville and start a church in Zanesville. My grandfather saw the ad, and he went there and moved Reverend Morris and his family from there to Zanesville and didn't charge them. And my parents have said a couple of times, and one time in particular, they were at a funeral, and Reverend Morris stopped in the middle of his sermon, and he was saying, you know, how he got there, and he pointed back at my dad, and he says, you see that? I don't remember whether Dad said he called him a boy or a young man, but he said, you see that man back there? He said, his father moved me to Zanesville and didn't charge me a penny. So he was very, very pleased that someone would, you know, take the time and just do that and not charge to get him set up. And then he was in Zanesville until he passed away. I think it was in the 80s. I'm not sure.
What type of transportation did your grandfather use to move him?
A truck. Just his, well, from what I understand, it might have been a big, it might have been bigger than a pickup, like a, what do I want to say? It's a truck. I would say it probably had the slatted sides on the, I can't think of what they would haul them in now, but it was either a pickup or a little bit larger truck. But yeah, my grandfather has worked on, I'm not sure if Jesse worked in the coal mines, but he hauled coal, fruits and vegetables. He's worked on lumber. He's just, I mean, they had 13 children to raise, so he did just about whatever he could to provide for his family. So,
Well, I'm going to switch gears again and talk
okay.
about, I want to know about the musical side of your family. Were any of your family into music, instrument playing, or entertainers?
Oh, gal, who? I just can't think of anybody right off the top of my head.
Singing in church?
Oh, my grandmother sang in the church choir. She was very involved with the church choir.
And her name was?
Retha. And I'm not sure if my grandma Ethel did or not, but I know she was very involved with the church. And in fact, on Ancestry.com, I'm going through all those newspaper articles to find different things, from her involvement with the church and her social activities in Zanesville.
Did how about education? What role did education play in your family?
Uh, it was Education was important to the family, but my father quit school in 8th grade to help out with the family. He was the fourth oldest of the 13 children. So he quit school in 8th grade and helped on the farm or helped wherever he needed to help with jobs, for the family. My mother quit school in 10th grade, 10th or 11th grade. She and my father were married. She was 16 when they married, and Dad was 20, and they just celebrated they were married in 1942, so that will make, 64 years. Last April, they had been married 64 years.
Yeah. Um, and how about the children of your mom and dad? Did, uh, did they insist that you study after school? And
Oh, we did. Neither one of my brothers or I went on to college. At the time I came, well, I did take a few classes, but I didn't go on to get a degree. At the time I came out of school, I was into secretarial work. And when I graduated from high school, I got a job with Michigan State University, and I was making $350 a month and got paid once a month. um, and then I worked there for a year and got a job with the state of Michigan, and my pay doubled. And as I continued to work, with the experience, I kept getting promotions until I finally became a executive secretary. I worked for department directors for 3 different departments, and then I left the state in 1980 when I had my son, who was 3 months premature, and I stayed home with him for about 8 years. And then at the time, my husband's nephew was an attorney, and had moved back to Lansing and opened up his own office, and I went to work for him and was a legal secretary and office manager for, oh gal, I don't know, about 5 years, and then I was home again, and then I went back to work again, and so, yeah.
are there any stories that you would like to share with us about your father's side of the family?
Oh, golly. I can't think of any just right at the
Did he talk
moment.
much about his family when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, they were a fairly close family and visited, a lot with each other. He said my grandmother was quite a prankster, and he had some brothers that were some pranksters, and one of them tied the cow's tails to the fence, and my grandmother, and then he tied the cow's tails together. And they were hollering. My grandmother couldn't figure out what was wrong, and she went out there and hollered at them, about because they had tied the cow's tails together, and just full of pranksters. And then Halloween, she would dress up and go through the house making all these noises and do funny things. Just